Today, we're diving into Charles Dickens's Hard Times. And it's not just a novel. It's really a powerful, timeless warning that all starts with one very simple, very cold demand.
The entire book kicks off with this thunderous line from its main character, Thomas Gradgrind. And that one sentence, it just perfectly captures this rigid, fact-obsessed way of looking at the world, a philosophy that only values what you can measure and count.
And that, right there, is the very worldview Dickens wanted to completely dismantle. He masterfully shows us the deep, deep flaws in the real human cost of a society that basically forgets how to feel and imagine.
To really see Dickens's argument in action, we first have to step into the world he created, a world where this philosophy of fact was, well, the foundation for everything.
So the big idea at the heart of the novel is this philosophy called utilitarianism. Now, in Dickens's hands, this means a system that doesn't see people as individuals with, rich inner lives. No, it sees them as just cogs in a machine, only valuable for what they can produce. Things like emotions, art, imagination, all of that is seen as completely useless, just a distraction.
And you see this philosophy everywhere in the grim, fictional town of Coketown. It's not just some abstract idea, it's literally the air people breathe. And it's enforced most brutally in Thomas Gradgrind's school.
But here's the thing about Dickens. He doesn't just tell us this system is bad. Oh no, he shows us its catastrophic failure, revealing the consequences through the lives of the characters themselves.
In Gradgrind's school, kids are treated like little empty jars, just waiting to be filled with facts. Any natural sense of wonder they have is just systematically crushed. And the dehumanization is chillingly specific. The character, Sissy Jupe, she isn't even called by her name. She's reduced to girl number 20, just a number.
And you want to know the ultimate proof that this whole system fails? It comes from its supposed star pupils, Gradgrind's own children. His son Tom grows up to be a moral vacuum, totally selfish, completely dishonest. And his daughter, Louisa, becomes emotionally crippled. She's literally incapable of understanding or expressing love, which, as you can imagine, leads her into a disastrous, loveless marriage.
In the end, even the architect of this whole system, Gradgrind himself, is forced to watch it all crumble. He finally realizes, way too late, that his philosophy has a fatal flaw. It completely ignores what Dickens calls the essential wisdom of the heart.
Okay, so Dickens doesn't just show us the problem, he offers an alternative. And this brings us to the central conflict of the entire novel, this epic battle between fact and what he calls fancy.
And the conflict is just so clear. In one corner, you've got fact, represented by Gradgrind, the rigid, gray monotony of Coketown, and just cold statistics. And in the other corner, you have fancy, represented by Sissy Jupe, the vibrant, imaginative world of the circus, and values like compassion and creativity.
Sissy Jupe is the absolute embodiment of fancy. I mean, she was raised in a circus, a world of stories and wonder, and she becomes the story's moral compass. She has all the emotional intelligence and empathy that the Gradgrind family so desperately lacks, and she proves that a human connection is way more powerful than any fact you could ever memorize.
Now, this critique of education, it gets bigger. It expands to condemn the entire social landscape of the Industrial Revolution. Dickens shows us that the human cost of all this fact-obsessed progress was just immense.
Just listen to this description. Cooktown isn't just a place, it's a symbol of industrial decay. Those interminable serpents of smoke. That imagery creates this hellish landscape that perfectly mirrors the moral and spiritual pollution of a society obsessed with industry above everything and everyone else.
And in this environment, the workers are just completely dehumanized. They aren't even called people. They're simply called the hands, like they're just interchangeable parts in a giant machine. The character of Stephen Blackpool, an honest and suffering worker, really gives a human face to the immense injustice the working class had to endure.
And presiding over this whole system is the factory owner, Josiah Bounderby. This guy is the ultimate hypocrite, a man who invents a whole life story just to justify his own cruelty.
Bounderby's entire identity is built on a complete lie. He's constantly bragging about being a self-made man who dragged himself out of poverty. And he uses this myth to argue that the poor, well, they only have themselves to blame. But the reality? It's a total fraud. He actually came from a perfectly comfortable, loving home, and when he's exposed, it just shatters the cruel myth he used to justify the class divide.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? Dickens pulls all these threads together to deliver a final verdict, a warning that feels just as relevant today as it did back in the 19th century.
The answer comes from a really unlikely source, the circus owner, Mr. Sleary. His simple declaration, "People must be amused," is one of the most profound lines in the whole book. He's arguing that storytelling, joy, and imagination, they aren't luxuries. They're fundamental human needs.
And that right there is the core message of Hard Times. It is a powerful, enduring plea. A society built only on facts, utility, and progress, one that ignores compassion and that wisdom of the heart, is just destined for misery and injustice. Kindness and imagination are not optional extras, they are absolutely essential.
Which leaves us with the final, pretty pressing question. In our own age, an age so driven by data, analytics, and measurable outcomes, well, Dickens's warning echoes louder than ever. How do we make sure that we are making enough space for fancy, for imagination, for empathy, and for the simple, unquantifiable joy of just being human?